The executive leader was frustrated and struggling. She said, our work environment is toxic. And then she asked, should I just accept it? And whose responsibility is it to fix? Those questions matter because a toxic work environment is not just a people issue. It's a performance risk issue. It's a leadership risk and a business risk. Toxic environments erode trust. They slow decision-making, accelerate your talent loss, and quietly undermine your strategy, often long before you see its impact in your numbers. When I ask leaders and employees, what do you mean when you say the environment is toxic? The stories vary, but three themes always seem to arise. Disrespect. People feel disrespected. There's a lack of trust and psychological safety, and there is high stress, burnout, and low morale within the organization or the teams that are experiencing that toxic work environment. So how do you fix a toxic work environment? Well, first, it's helpful to understand how it forms. A toxic work environment doesn't appear overnight. And in my experience, leaders and employees don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to create a toxic work environment. They develop through what I call collaboration gone wrong. Work environments, whether healthy or toxic, are co-created by the leaders, the managers, and the employees, everyone within that organization. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Toxicity is sustained through that ongoing act-react cycle. One person or group acts in a particular way. Another person or group reacts. Over time, those reactions harden into patterns. In a toxic work environment, often those patterns are defensiveness, withdrawal, blame, micromanagement, control, lack of trust, disrespect. I worked with one executive leadership team that was described as a toxic environment. Any question or comment that didn't align with the leader who was introducing a new idea was interpreted as a challenge to their authority. Their responses were often defensive. Trust dropped. Ideas stalled. Executive discussions escalated into shouting matches with each leader defending their position. And that behavior didn't stay in that executive room. It cascaded through the organization. Employees began describing the culture as toxic. They didn't trust leadership. They questioned why respect was expected of them when they didn't experience it from above. This is where leadership accountability becomes non-negotiable. Leaders, you may not cause every issue, but you set the conditions that determine whether those patterns persist. And one of the most critical periods where toxicity can either deepen or dissolve is the way you introduce and respond to change. When you introduce change, do you shut down questions? Do you defend your decision or your authority to make that decision? Or do you listen through the readiness lens? With the readiness mindset, questions and concerns become information that can help you assess people's level of readiness and what's at risk. And the same applies in reverse. When you are experiencing or introduced to something new, do you ask questions to protect the status quo and close down the conversation? Or do you approach it with curiosity, emotional agility, and a willingness to explore the new idea? When you as a leader respond to what you perceive as resistance with pressure, dismissal, or escalation, fear and mistrust grow. When you engage with curiosity, when you ask questions like, what is this reaction telling me about their readiness? What are the risks of moving forward? What do you see that I'm not seeing? Then the dynamic shifts from reaction to interaction. None of this is about lowering your standards or challenging your authority to guide, direct, and make decisions for your organization. It's about increasing readiness and creating a healthy work environment. I know the challenges of leading in this environment. You are accountable for results, timelines, and performance. You're navigating in a complex, uncertain world of relentless pressure. Your work environment can either help or hinder you. Cleansing a toxic work environment doesn't start with new values or policies or even a training program. It starts when you, as a leader, change how you respond in moments of tension, uncertainty, fear, and pushback. That's what that leadership team did. First, they acknowledged that the environment was toxic and it was limiting their growth. Then they examined what they needed to do differently. Finally, each leader committed to changing how they responded, developing new communication skills. Questions were no longer treated as challenges or threats. They were reframed as information. Leaders became curious. They asked questions with the goal of understanding and seeing a different perspective. They raised concerns differently. Over time, trust rebuilt. Arguments became conversations. Decisions became more informed. Conflict decreased. It didn't happen all at once. It took time. It took commitment, humility, the willingness to be vulnerable, and to examine their thinking and their behaviors. So here's the question I want to leave you with. When people push back or raise concerns, do you label them as resistant or do you get curious? Because when you dismiss their concerns or push harder, pressure turns into toxicity. Toxic work environments are created, but they can be changed or prevented when you as the leader are willing to examine your contribution and intentionally set the conditions for a healthy, high-performing environment. What do you need to do differently to build and maintain a healthy culture of readiness in your organization? That's it for now. I'll talk to you soon.